Namaste everyone, my name is Shreya Singh, a student of BSc Regular, roll number 205063, semester 6, and my topic for presentation is graph theory. Graph. Basically, graph theory in discrete mathematics is the study of graph. A graph is determined as a mathematical structure that represents a particular function by connecting a set of points. It is used to create a pairwise relationship between objects. The graph is made up of vertices, nodes that are connected by the edges, lines. The application of the linear graph are used not only in mathematics but also in other fields such as computer science, physics, chemistry, linguistics, biology, etc. In real life, also, the best example of graph structure is GPS, where you can track the path or know the direction of the road. Here, the graph G is a mathematical structure consisting of two sets, V and E, where V is a non-empty set of vertices and E is a non-empty set of edges. So, for example, we have V1, E1 and V2, where E1 is a non-empty set of edges and V1 and V2 is the non-empty set of vertices. Now, the basic terminology in graph theory. In trivial graphs, like these are the types of graphs. Like for example, trivial graph, a graph consisting of only one vector and no edges. For example, 0. A null graph, a graph consisting n vertices and no edges. So, for example, the circle. Discrete graph. Discrete graph. In graph theory, a discrete graph is a graph made up of set of vertices connected by edges in which the edges have direction associated with them. And the undirected graph. The undirected graph is defined as a graph where the set of nodes are connected together in which all the edges are bidirectional. Sometimes this type of graph is also known as undirected graph. Here in undirected graphs, in the graph which is not directed, it is called undirected, and we know that directed graphs consist the direction of edges, and those are the graphs which consist direction of edges, that are directed graph, and the graph which are not directed, then it is undirected. Now, self loop in a graph. What is self loop in a graph? Self loop, if edges having the same vertex as both its vertex, is called a self loop. Proper edge. An edge which is not self loop is called a proper edge. A collection of two or more edges having identically endpoints. For example, E1, E2 and E3 are multi-edge. For a simple graph, a graph that does not contain any self loop or multi-edge. For example, we can see in the diagram that this triangle, we have three vertices, V1, V3 and V2, and E1, E2 and E3 as edges. So it is a simple graph. That means it does not contain any self loop and it is a multi-edge graph. Multi-graph, a graph that does not contain any self loop but contain multi-edge, is called multi-graph. For example, you can see in the diagram below. Now, the pseudograph. Pseudograph, a graph which contains both self loop and multi-edge. Multi-edge is called a pseudograph. Like for example, you can see in the diagram that the diagram following contains vertices v1, v2, v3, v4, v5, and edges e1, e2, e3, e4, e5, e6, e7, where e2 and e4 are the e2, e4 and e5 are the multi-edge. Incidence and adjacency. Let EK be an edge joining two vertices Vi and Vj. The EK is said to be incident of Vi and Vj. Two vertices are said to be adjacent if there exists an edge joining these vertices. Finite and infinite graph. A graph with finite number of vertices as well as edge is called finite graph. Otherwise, it is called infinite graph. Thank you so much.